the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. It's Friday night. We're live. We're national. And the phone number, if you want to join us, is 866-505-4626. That's the Jimbo hotline, the legacy line. Of course, same number, same studio, 833-4-VALDEZ. Love to give a shout out to the legacy line every now and again. And let's talk about what's going on in the news today, right? Still some fallout with Mayor Eric Adams. Apparently now one of the people that were conspiring with him is going to turn states on him. We'll get into that in a little bit. Then there's also this report that the administration of Kamala Harris and Joe El Baboso Biden let in 425,431 non-detained people from their non-detained, non-citizen convicted criminals list. Check this out. 13,000 of them convicted of homicide. 15,811 were convicted of sexual assault before they came to the United States, and they were still let into this country. They were let into this country and given a debit card with $20,000 on it. Isn't that crazy? Absolutely crazy. That's what's going on with Joe El Baboso Biden. And let's see. Then Kamala Harris herself, she heads over to the border to talk about it. And let me tell you, the data is not showing anything good for her. Right? I mean, when you got that 425,000, when you add in, let me see if I can break down these numbers for you. All right, so I just talked about the 13,000 that were convicted of homicide before they came here, right? So murderers, migrant murderers. Then you've got 222,000 migrants that were facing criminal charges. And when you add everything up, right, you've got plus that 222,000, you got the 425,000 I just mentioned. You come up with a number that is around 650,000 criminal migrants and suspects. That is the data that is being reported. Fox News reported this information. This information came as a bombshell. I think this is a bombshell, right? I mean, absolute insanity. And we have this report from Fox News. I want you to listen to this.
According to a letter that the acting director of ICE just sent to Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez, on ICE's non-detained docket, they're currently tracking 425,000 non-citizens who have been convicted of a crime. Of that number, over 13,000 non-citizens have convictions for homicide and are on the non-detained docket, meaning they're roaming the country right now. On top of that, there are another 15,811 non-citizens convicted of sexual assault who are roaming the country right now on ICE's non-detained docket. It doesn't stop there. Those are convictions. The ICE director also says there are currently just under 1,900 non-citizens on the non-detained docket who have pending homicide charges, who are roaming the country, and another 4,250 non-citizens who have pending sexual assault charges who are roaming the country on the non-detained docket.
That's massive, right? Again, 662,566 non-citizens with criminal histories on ICE's national docket. Again, that includes those that were detained by ICE, and on the agency's non-detained docket, of those 435,719 are convicted criminals including 13,099 that are murderers and 226,847 that have pending criminal charges. Wow. I mean, really, this is massive, right? Then the report says an additional 222,144 undetained migrants are facing criminal charges, including 1,845 homicide charges, even though the agency is choosing not to use all of its 41,000 detention beds. I mean, these are massive numbers. If that's the amount of criminals that they know got in, right? We always hear about the gotaways. Those are the ones that they have no knowledge of. They got away. Unbelievable. Again, kudos to Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez, because had he not, sent this request, he would not have gotten a letter back from ICE with all this information. Unbelievable. Let me see. The data also showed that an additional 15,000 migrant criminals are currently in jail. The jailed population includes 277 migrant murderers and 51 migrants who are facing murder charges. Those are the ones in jail, not included in that larger number. There's also 17,000 migrants that have been found guilty or charged with sex offenses. The, quote, non-citizens term in the data refers to illegal immigrants that overstay their visas and green card holders, all of whom can be deported if the administration officials actually assign resources to do the job. The criminals are not in detention because they have served their time, but have not been deported. So look at that. Some of these people went to jail and were let out. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was in high school, I had a couple of friends that went astray. Wanted to live that street life, fast money. And one of my friends was born in Nicaragua, but I'd known him, since I moved to Jersey when I was 12, and knew him straight through high school into our young adulthood. And like I said, he got involved in stuff he shouldn't have gotten involved in, and he got arrested. He did his time. He did 4 years in prison. And the day that they released him from prison, he got deported to Nicaragua. And he's been there ever since. And I talk to him every now and again, and he tells me, man, this is a third world country. And his saving grace is that, he grew up in the United States. He came here as an infant. So he's fluent in English, and he's able to work, because he dominates the English language. And it's a big value add in Nicaragua. But wow. This is a kid who lived his whole life here, doesn't know any other country to be home. Yet here you have these people that are coming here in the last 3.5 years, committing crimes in this country, and they're welcome to stay as long as they go to jail. I got to tell you, it's kind of crazy. It really is. Anyway, all that being said, all this information coming out today that we've got 650,000 plus criminal illegal aliens and suspects. Who decides to go to the border? That's right. Vice President Kamala Harris. She decides to go down to the border to conduct a photo op to make it look like she's in charge of something. Trump made some great statements tonight, and he said, who does that? Why would she go to the border? This is feeding right into her opponent's hand. And he's right. Kamala going to the border isn't doing anything. This is not, I don't believe she's going to be able to sell anybody on the idea that this is somebody else's fault other than hers and Joe Biden's. You can't blame Trump for it because, remember, he was a xenophobe, right? You remember? He was a racist. Remember? They're rapists. They're murderers, right? Remember the Muslim ban? There's no way they can attach this to Trump. Everybody knew Trump was an evil dictator at the border. So if there's a lot of migrants in this country, it happened on her watch. She let it happen. She's going to have to own it. I don't know. I feel like her numbers are going to go down after her visit to the border instead of going up. Anyway, we're going to get into some discussion on that because I think this is probably the biggest story of the day for sure. And we'll get into a couple other things. I want to also have some discussion about what's going on with the deep state, how bureaucrats, how they exist, right? There's a lot of people that work in the federal government, and there's a lot of overlap and a lot of pork barrel spending. And many people don't even know what's going on. So we're going to take a look at that. And also, we're going to get with one of our experts, a psychiatrist that's a regular on our program, to talk about what's going on inside the head of America's most famous sex trafficker, P. Diddy. And we'll talk a little bit about the Trump shooters and what's going on inside their heads as well. And we're going to be doing that straight ahead. So, folks, if you want to join the conversation, feel free. You know the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
The United States has been enriched by generations of people who have come from every corner of the world to contribute to our country and to become part of the American story. And so we must reform our immigration system to ensure that it works in an orderly way, that it is humane, and that it makes our country stronger.
That is Kamala Harris, who is affectionately known on this program as Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris went down to the border today to, in my opinion, to embarrass herself, saying things like she just said. I don't think are going to get her elected. I think the whole thing, letting America know that we need immigration reform. It's kind of like, I don't know. You open the border and then say, hey, we need immigration reform. I think it's a really bad look. But I want to analyze this with somebody who understands this a lot more than me. The first and former chief of the Office of Citizenship under the Bush administration, director of Hispanic engagement at the American Principles Project, Alfonso Aguilar is with us. And he also worked as deputy director of public affairs at the U.S. Department of Energy and as executive director of the Puerto Rico Federal Affairs Administration and press secretary to former governor of Puerto Rico, Pedro Rosselló, a long time ago. Alfonso Aguilar, welcome, sir.
Oh, good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's talk a little bit about, if you could put your chief of the Office of Citizenship hat on, right? You have a vast experience in government. And Alfonso, what I think is going on here, in my opinion, is a really bad political move. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not a miscalculation. But I'm really curious to see your perspective here on why Harris, on where she's weakest, and probably I'd say Trump is polling really well. You got 60% of Americans that are in favor of mass deportation in the last poll I saw. Why would she show up at the border?
Well, you think they've probably seen the polls. Immigration is one of the top two issues in every single poll. And as you say, majority of Americans believe that Trump will do a better job. Her strategy so far has been kind of to avoid the issue. She doesn't do interviews. She hasn't done a press conference. But looking at those polls, it gets to a point where probably the campaign said, we have to do something, right? So have her go to the border. But going to the border, at the end of this 4-year term, with 40 days to go to the election, it looks, highly political, and it's a farce. So I agree with you that at the end, it's counterproductive for her campaign. It looks like she's lying, which is exactly what she's doing, right?
Sure.
To me, she's going to the border, and this is the irony of all of this. She's going to the border to say she wants to resolve the problem, the crisis that they've created, and they want to resolve it with the same policy solutions that created the problem. So it is crazy. And then after that, they want to blame Donald Trump for the crisis. So it's just amazing. But, I don't think the American people are not stupid. They can see through her. And look, why is she trying to be tough now? We know her record. Before being VP, She was a radical on immigration. She was for open borders. She was for decriminalizing illegal entry. She was for dismantling ICE. She was for stopping all deportations. So clearly, she was very liberal on the border, and then she was part of this administration, which instituted open border policies and encouraged millions of people to come to our southern border. They encouraged people from over 140 countries to come to our southern border because people know that if you make it to the southern border, they're going to allow you in, and
give you $20,000 in a debit card.
Exactly, and they allowed millions of people. Mayorkas told the Border Patrol that 85% of the people that have arrived at the southern border are allowed in. And they're released into the community, people with ties to terrorist organizations, to criminal organizations that we didn't even know about. Tren de Aragua. We were dealing with MS-13. Now we're dealing with the Venezuelan gang. I mean,
who apparently seem to be worse.
Exactly. So this is what they did. And now she's saying she's tough on immigration. I mean, it's a joke. Because part of this issue is that we need to realize that, she may talk about being tough on the border, but the damage is done. We have millions of people here, up to, 8 million people or more. We're not counting the getaways, those people who haven't been detained by the Border Patrol, but who've gotten in. And they're here, and they're having an impact in our cities and our communities. We know about the big cities, right? New York, Chicago, even the Democratic mayors are complaining. But now they're going also to small towns. And we know the story of Springfield, Ohio, where, a small town of 58,000 people, and all of a sudden 20,000 Haitians arrive. I mean, obviously it's going to cause a cultural clash and cultural confrontation. It's normal. We're human beings, right? That's not the way to do immigration in America. Our system was never created to receive so many people in such a short period of time. This is what they've created. So going to the border is just absurd. And then the other thing, to say that that the solution is the so-called bipartisan border bill is ridiculous. That bill had no chance of passing. Even if Trump would have not gotten involved, Republicans were not going to support that bill. But that bill actually...
It was a bad bill.
It was a bad bill. It perpetuates the current situation. It would allow up to 5,000 people to come in the country. So if anything, it would allow them to manage better the entry of people. But to be clear, they would still come in, and they would come in large numbers. So it's still bad, and without all the exceptions, because the number of 5,000 doesn't include unaccompanied minors and other type of migrants. So that was a bad bill. So I don't know. To me, it's ridiculous. I think it's counterproductive. I don't think it's going to change the numbers. The majority of Americans believe that the Biden-Harris administration created this crisis, and they know that Donald Trump can do a better job.
Folks, we're on with Alfonso Aguilar, and I agree. I think this was them trying to codify their illegal immigration scheme into law by allowing 2 million people a year in illegally. And that isn't going to help any problems. Folks, we're coming right back with Alfonso Aguilar from the American Principles Project. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Under Kamala Harris, we'd have over 500,000 children have been smuggled into the United States, separated from their families, smuggled by criminal cartels, and released to the United States. That's your failure as the borders are. And let me add this. They've released these people to so-called sponsors. They don't vet properly. Now they can't find 148,000 children or their sponsors, and I guarantee you, based on my 3.5 decades of investigative experience, These children are in forced labor, or they're in forced sex trade, and they're living a life of hell. This administration, what they've done on the border is disgusting.
That's former ICE Director Tom Homan on the Fox News Channel giving an impassioned update on what's going on. And our guest is Alfonso Aguilar. He's the first and the former chief of the Office of Citizenship during the Bush administration. He's also director of Hispanic engagement at the American Principles Project. Great group, by the way. And has a slew of experience working in government, including in the state government for the governor of Puerto Rico. And Alfonso Aguilar, I want to play another clip of audio for you. I played it before I brought you on, and the audience has heard it, but I want you to hear it because it really puts some of this into perspective. But before I do, I want to get your reaction to what he was talking about, because we talked about that yesterday, about this hundreds of thousands of children that are not accounted for because they're not showing up for their court dates and they're no longer with their sponsor. And what's your reaction to that?
Well, what they created is not only a national security crisis. We have terrorists coming in the southern border. It's a health crisis, public health crisis because of all the fentanyl that's coming in. But it's also a humanitarian crisis. We're encouraging millions of people from across the world to make a very dangerous trip to our southern border. That trip through Central America. What this situation creates is a corridor of terror where women, over 60% of women, are victims of sexual assault and rape. And this massive movement of people, as he was clearly explaining, facilitates child trafficking. So we have traffickers, global traffickers, networks of traffickers moving children to the southern border. And the Border Patrol is overwhelmed. So they receive them. They release them to HHS because they can only keep them for a short period of time. And then HHS releases them to relatives or people who they think are relatives, but it turns out in many cases that are actually traffickers. So this is what's happening. We are making life easier for child traffickers. And as he was also mentioning, this administration has lost contact with over 300,000 children, unaccompanied minors. Now, I remember during the Trump years, when AOC and Kamala Harris, remember, dressed in white, went to the border to complain that children were kept in cages. All a lie. Where are they now? This is much worse. They've lost contact with 300,000 children. We don't know where they are. Kamala, where are the children? Can you please tell us? That's what we should be asking. And sadly, they're being trafficked. So Joe Biden said when he ran for president that he wanted to have an immigration system that was humane and moral. And I ask you, is this humane and moral? Of course not. It is inhumane and it's immoral. And it's not only bad for U.S. citizens, but this system, this travesty that they've created is bad for migrants themselves, poor people who don't know better and think that if they make it to the southern border, they're going to be allowed in. And frankly, it's just a terrible situation because we've never heard of this type of numbers. In our history, these numbers are unprecedented and clearly started when he arrived in office. And you have several Central American presidents saying that is the fault of the Biden-Harris administration.
Folks, we're on with Alfonso Aguilar from the American Principles Project. And you bring up a really interesting point that we probably don't hear enough about, which is this is not just, like you said, a national security issue, but it's become a humanitarian crisis. And I'll take it a step further and say it's really facilitating the smuggling of children, the human smuggling problem that always exists at the border, and it's exacerbating it because of the lax policy position of this administration. And do you think they get away without anybody really giving a damn? Like, do they, will people just, like Tim Walz says, mind your damn business, and people just going to forget about this?
Well, apparently that's what they hoped. But, you're absolutely right. When the Border Patrol is so overwhelmed, with migrants arriving at the border. They're just basically processing them, right? Just come in,
right.
Give us your name, and come in. Period. They don't have the time, the human resources, the time to actually do their interdiction work, to actually go after drug traffickers, to stop the fentanyl, and to go after the human traffickers and actually identify those networks and groups of child traffickers and the children being trafficked. So that's why it's so easy to bring those people in and to bring the drugs in, overwhelm the border. That's very simple. You overwhelm the border. We don't have enough Border Patrol officers. They can't do their job. And and then when you have Texas saying, okay, we have to do something, instead of supporting Texas, they go after Governor Abbott and they go to court to try to stop him. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And I see that Congress has subpoenaed Javier Becerra, the Secretary of HHS, who's in charge of these children, and really to no avail other than, getting the runaround with documents and whatnot. I'm really curious to see if this is an issue that matters to Americans or not. And I don't know if it's whether it doesn't matter or if it's just not getting the light of day because they're not talking about it on The View and maybe Oprah's not talking about it. But I think it's something that should transcend party lines. And I think everybody should be upset with what's happening at the border. I mean, the UN said that we have the most lethal border crossing in the world. And that's something that happened under Harris and Biden, not under Trump.
Well, there are many people involved in the child trafficking business. A lot of consumers who are elites, right? They don't want to talk about this publicly. And you're absolutely right. This is it's a huge crisis that should be one of the top issues that we're discussing, but it's not. And the mainstream media ignores it, doesn't want to talk about it. But it's really a huge issue. Where are these kids ending up? And who are the consumers of child sex? We should have that conversation because the U.S., sadly, is one of the top, if not the top country in terms of demand for child trafficking.
It's very sad. Folks, we're coming right back with Alfonso Aguilar, former chief of the Citizenship Office for the United States and the head of the Hispanic Outreach Program at the American Principles Project. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with Alfonso Aguilar, former chief of the Citizenship Office in the United States federal government, and, of course, the head of Hispanic engagement at the American Principles Project. And, Alfonso, we got a piece from Newsweek here, it's from today, that is reporting Kamala Harris, I'll give you the headline. Kamala Harris is behind in Arizona as polls show her Latino voting problem.
Yeah.
And looks like she's falling behind in the polls because she's not getting any traction with Latino voters, and she really needs that in order to win in Arizona. And this is, I believe it's a trend. We've seen it kind of teetering, but I believe she might have, because she's a Democrat, a majority of Hispanic voters at the end of this whole thing. But losing the amount that she's losing, I think, is very problematic. And there's a Marist poll that just wrapped up on the 24th that shows Trump ahead and still holding 50% of the votes in Arizona. What do you think's going on?
Well, it is dramatic. I think it's a major realignment in with the Hispanic vote. I think Hispanics are like other groups in the past, Italians, Irish, 100 years ago. They initially were Democrats, and then with time, as they assimilated, became part of the country, assimilated into our culture, they started voting like average Americans. And instead of thinking following groupthink, they start thinking of their own individual interests, what's best for the families. And that's how most Americans think, right? And I think that's what's happening with Hispanics. They're tired of the pandering of Democrats, the same old discourse of you're going to be discriminated. Republicans hate you. They hate Hispanics. They only want to talk about comprehensive immigration reform. If you look at every poll, Hispanics, like the rest of Americans, believe that inflation and the border crisis is the top issue. And on immigration, there are polls that show the majority of Hispanics actually believe Trump could do a better job. So they're really changing as voters. Democrats thought that they've always treated Hispanics in a very condescending way, as you know, as if Hispanics are monolithic, as if we all think in the same way and share the same views on the subjects, on the issues. And that's not true. I mean, within the Hispanic community, there's a great diversity of backgrounds, of points of view. And I think what we're seeing is the rise of the Hispanic swing voter. You know, independent Hispanics who are saying, I'm going to look out for my interests, for the interests of my family. And many of them are turned off by the radical policies of the Democrats. When they look at crime and you see Democrat prosecutors who are not going after criminals, letting them go. When they see what's happening at the border, that's totally out of control, letting, criminal gangs and that are committing serious and heinous crimes in their communities and cities, they're concerned about that. And also the whole woke agenda, this idea of letting minors have access to puberty blockers and same-sex operations, letting trans men compete in girls' sport. For Hispanics, for many Hispanics, that's really radical, right? So
sacrilege.
Absolutely. They come here for the American dream, right? They don't want to be told that, you can't advance in America, that you're going to be discriminated. They're coming from countries in Latin America where there is actual systemic racism, right? If you come from Guatemala and you're a certain background, you're not going to have access to many opportunities, but they come here and immediately lots of opportunities open up. So they're tired of that old discourse of the left. They're turned off by the cultural Marxist narrative of the left. And I think they're responding very well to President Trump's message. So when you look at that polling in Arizona where Trump is ahead with Hispanics, that's dramatic. And remember, Trump doesn't need to win outright the Hispanic vote. If he gets to, 42, 45% of the Hispanic vote and she goes down to 50, 54%, she can win. Remember, they're used to winning the Hispanic vote by a margin of 3-1 or 2-1. So this is a major problem they're having. And what they don't realize is that, Hispanic, you have to win Hispanics over with ideas. You cannot pander to them and treat them like just another minority group that doesn't know better. No, you have to convince Hispanics with ideas. And actually, Donald Trump is winning the battle of ideas with Hispanics. So that's very encouraging.
Alfonso Aguilar is the Director of Hispanic Engagement at the American Principles Project. And Alfonso, as you were talking about the radical woke agenda, my dad died in 2017. He was born in Caguas, Puerto Rico. And all I could think is if I had to tell my dad, what happened in the news today, they were allowing kids to take pills so that they can become girls or boys or girls. Right. I can only imagine the things that would come out of his mouth, right? It's just an idea that just doesn't resonate, right, with so many people in our culture.
It's funny you say that. The reaction is visceral. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I can vouch for what you're saying. But we did focus groups recently, just last year, of Hispanic voters in Arizona, Nevada, and we asked them about these issues, and the reaction was the same, visceral, saying this is crazy, this is perverse. There's no political correctness in the reaction. So yes, I think inflation is probably a top issue. But I think the cultural issues are also a major reason why Hispanics are moving away from the Democratic Party. It's just too crazy. Yeah.
And, something else you mentioned about Hispanics not being a monolith. And I think that there's Puerto Rico, I mean, that's you were born, and I understand that culture well. It is such an interesting microcosm of that, right? You have there are, and you correct me if you disagree at some point, but there are people that are pro statehood, pro liberty. Many of them Republicans. There are people that I would say embrace the same ideology as Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, and they promote becoming their own country, the independent movement. And those two ideas couldn't be further apart from each other, right? And yet you have them all sharing this tiny little island that's similar to New Jersey in population. So when you talk about not being a monolith, that's a perfect example.
Well, it's interesting because it's not monolithic within the larger Hispanic community, but even within the specific groups, as you say, they're not monolithic. You can take the Puerto Rican vote. You go to the Bronx, you go to AOC's district, and you understand how they elect AOC, because you see a lot of Puerto Ricans or children or grandchildren of Puerto Ricans arrive there in the 50s, and they're leftists. They fell
they support Lolita Lebron.
Because they fell prey to identity politics, right? But then you go to Central Florida, and I tell you, Orlando and the I-4 corridor, and I tell you, you see Trump Boricuas. These are fans of President Trump. Look what happened in 2 years ago. Governor DeSantis not only won the Hispanic vote in the entire state, it wasn't because of the Cubans in Miami-Dade County. Yes, they absolutely helped. He won Miami-Dade. But he also won Osceola County. That's a Puerto Rican county. They've always said, Puerto Ricans are Democrats. This is the problem with Democrats. They always generalize about people. And I tell you, Puerto Ricans, you go to Central Florida, you see so many Puerto Ricans excited about President Trump. And let me tell you, they know that there's no other president has done more for Puerto Rico than Donald Trump in terms of all the resources and funds and attention Puerto Rico received after after the last hurricane. That's a reality. And, you obviously have some leftists that are going to complain, and Democrats, whatever. But look, and I think the same experience can be said about Cubans, about Mexican Americans. Being Mexican American in Texas is different from California, as you know. And so I think what's happening is very exciting. And I think it says, at least in terms of the Hispanic experience, that the American dream is still alive, that people come here, they assimilate, and they're coming here because of the American dream. What the Democratic Party stands for today, it's about socialism. It's not about the American dream. It's about killing the American dream, because they believe this country's racist, right? So who wants to come here to be told, this country's racist? Sorry, we're going to have to, follow equity. Well, that's what they do in Latin America, right?
Right.
Big government.
They do in Cuba and Venezuela and everywhere else. Alfonso, I got to jump in here because I have to hit a break. But folks, I want you to follow Alfonso Aguilar. What a great conversation we're having. Follow him at Amigo Aguilar on Twitter, known as X, and check out the website American Principles Project. Alfonso, is there anywhere else that you could be found online? Or
no, I try to avoid social media. So the best way to connect with me is on X, Amigo Aguilar. So that's where I post all my comments.
Perfect. Well, we're going to send everybody there. Alfonso Aguilar, former chief of the Office of Citizenship. He's with the American Principles Project. Thank you, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What a great conversation. Folks, we're coming right back with more great conversation about the deep state. What happens with these federal bureaucrats? All coming up with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. Live
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. It's Friday night, we're live, we're national. Here's the phone number if you want to call us, 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez. And we're going to get into a bunch of stuff. We just had a great hour-long conversation with Alfonso Aguilar, former chief of the U.S. Citizenship Office for Immigration. And just a huge, just wide-ranging conversation. If you missed it, I hope you're able to check it out at richvaldez.com and either subscribe to the podcast or listen to the replay there. And it's richvaldez with an S.com on all of the internets. That's plural because I like it that way. Anyway, I want to also remind you about a couple of things that are going on today, right? New York City Mayor Eric Adams has surrendered to authorities on fraud, bribery, and corruption charges. And let's see what else we've got here. Oh, my gosh, Tropical Storm Helene. This is actually a pretty big storm. Last I heard, some 40-some-odd people were killed. I don't know if that number is still accurate, but that's very unfortunate. And my thoughts and prayers for them. You guys should fact-check me on that in case I'm giving out fake news. I also saw that there's a lot of people that don't have power right now. So, again, hope everything gets restored there quickly. And something else I wanted to get into. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says we have deepened our ties with China. I'm thinking, what's the benefit of that, right? Isn't that part of the problem? We should probably be, loosening those ties. Anyway, there's also this big story that I wanted to get into, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But a Pennsylvania police officer testified yesterday on Capitol Hill saying that a local police officer's bullet ultimately stopped the failed assassination attempt of Thomas Crooks before the U.S. Secret Service fatally shot him. Adams Township Police Department Sergeant Edward Lenz, he was the commander of the SWAT team for the county, and we played some of that audio yesterday. He says that, here we go, he says, across the 2 counter-assault teams, the quick reaction force, and 3 sniper teams and support personnel, we provided total manpower of 44 persons, exceeding the number requested by the Secret Service. Again, Lenz, the commander with the Butler County Emergency Services Unit, said in his opening remarks, at no point during the planning process did the SWAT team ask to secure any part of the complex, nor the perimeter surrounding that area. And I'm trying to get to the good part here, where he says that it was their guys, a local, that ultimately shot the guy. Oh, here we go. Regarding the round fired by the local officer, we have no forensic evidence indicating that the round either struck our subject or the subject's rifle. That's what the FBI is saying in response to it. So it's in question. But interesting that the locals are saying that that's what's going on. So, again, Butler County ESU commander saying that he quickly identified where the shots were coming from, located the shooter, and fired 1 round at Crooks with his rifle, which caused the shooter to recoil and briefly fall out of sight. And that's what the Adams Township officer testified. And I think he has no reason to lie, right? That's literally what he was there for. He saw something, he did something. So kudos to him for doing that. Kudos to the Secret Service for taking him out. And, kudos to the Lord above who kept El Trompito alive and said, hey, look at that big Jumbotron next to you. Just absolutely insane the way that whole thing went down. So that's there. And it kind of, it puts me in a position where I'm just like, man, I really don't like bureaucrats. And yet there's so many interesting ways that bureaucrats do what they do. And, something like 66% of Americans believe that the federal government is incompetent. And that's up 10 points from 2022. And I would say one of the reasons is that people that are appointed to these federal agencies, they're largely immune from any public pressure. And you could see that with guys like Rowe, right? Mr. Rowe, who's now the acting director. The woman before him, Kimberly Cheadle, she wasn't immune from public pressure, and she eventually resigned. But this new guy, he's immune again, right? Doesn't matter what type of criticism you give him. He just doubles down all the time, defending the Secret Service as if their job is not to keep the president safe and alive. And the fact that Trump is alive today is really no fault of theirs, right? It was because he moved at a bullet that was about to take out his head. But for that, he'd be dead. And that's not lost on me. So I think, you need to come to your podium, Mr. Rowe, with a degree of humility. But I think that's part of the problem, is that these bureaucrats, they feel like they're not connected to reality. They don't care, because they can just stay in their positions long after their current term expires. They can go to a different job. They can bury them anywhere they want in this monstrously large federal government that we have. So I want to get a little discussion going on that with Paul Steidler. He's a senior fellow at the Lexington Institute, and we're going to talk about why federal bureaucrats get to play by a different set of rules than you and me, everyday Americans. Paul Steidler, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you, Rich.
My pleasure. Thank you. So let's talk about that. Why is it that the bureaucrats tend to get a pass on things that nobody else would get a pass on at work?
Well, the short answer is it's extremely hard to fire them. Most Americans are aware that people who work in the federal government, they're essentially like teachers in the public schools. Unless they do something that is extremely egregious, they are not going to be fired. And these tend to be, career people who want to work 9 to 5, have the security of a job that's there. But what I think is even more disturbing, Rich, is that there are 1,100 federal confirmed appointees in the federal government. These are people who the president nominates and who the U.S. Senate has to confirm. But the thing about a lot of these people is when their term expires, they get to stick around because there's either a 1-year holdover period or there's no holdover period, so they can just stay until somebody else is appointed and confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And that is a very long process. It takes a while to identify qualified candidates, to vet them, to make sure they're not going to be an embarrassment. The Senate takes its sweet time in going through this stuff. And this is going to be a huge issue for the next president-elect, especially if it's President-elect Trump, because there's just so many of these people who have to go in. And the Senate process for nominating and confirming them has gotten extremely slow. In the Reagan administration, people would typically be in about 30 or 60 days nominated, confirmed, and put into office. Right now, you're looking at a process where many of the nominees, if the current process stays in place, are not going to get in place until the end of 2025 or perhaps early 2026. And that's going to leave in place, we just had an example this week of how bad this can be. The chairwoman of the Federal Trade Commission is a Elizabeth Warren protege who has been at the tip of the spear for all of the aggressive Biden administration actions against business and really against the U.S. economy as a whole. She's a woman named Lena Khan. Her term expired on Wednesday, but President Biden has not nominated a replacement for her. And at the same time, while there are some people in the Democratic Party who are very favorably inclined to Lena Khan, it's also been a public matter that a number of major donors to Kamala Harris have publicly called for her to be fired. And they've publicly called for it on places like CNN. So the situation that's in place right now allows the Biden administration and the Harris campaign to have it both ways as far as Lina Khan leading the FTC. And the bigger point is her policies have been disastrous for the American people and business in general, and she ought not be in office. If President Biden wants her there, he should just man up and nominate her, and we ought to have a debate about whether she should be in there. But that's just one egregious example of how entrenched government leaders are who lead agencies. And Khan, for example, leads an agency of 1,200 people. And just, one of the formidable challenges that the next president-elect is going to have here.
This is a problem, and I want to dig into this Lina Khan stuff a little bit more because it's a good example of how deep the deep state, the administrative state, the permanent bureaucracy in Washington really is. And it's not just Washington, quite frankly. I think it exists in a lot of places. So, Paul Steidler, if you don't mind, stick with me. We're going to come right back and continue this discussion on Lina Khan and how that illustrates, really how broken Washington is. And overall, why federal bureaucrats have it so good. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
When you're a politician like these people, like me, like others, and you happen to be a Republican or somewhat conservative, they write just the opposite of what the facts are. And if you're driving a cab, if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, if you're something, other than that, you don't know the details. When we know the facts and then the story gets written the exact opposite of what it is, you start to lose faith in the press, I will tell you. But I will sign an executive order banning any federal employee from colluding to limit speech, and we will fire every federal bureaucrat who is engaged in domestic censorship under the Harris regime. We will do that.
That is El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, giving a very clear explanation on what he plans to do to start hammering away and chipping away at the deep state, the administrative state, the federal Leviathan. And good for him. That's exactly, I think, what needs to be done. I'm looking at an opinion piece here in the Wall Street Journal. Title says, Joe Biden evaporates, but his bureaucrats don't. And then subhead is Wonderland. One of the campaign's most important issues is the vast power and authority of the federal government. And the issue at hand is just that. Biden might leave, but he leaves it behind a trail of, in many cases, permanently placed bureaucrats because they might come in as an appointee, but they work their way into these career positions and they don't go anywhere. They're like permanent cogs in the system. So I want to come back to our guest to really continue that discussion with respect to bureaucrats and how the deep state really functions and ticks. Paul Steidler, senior fellow at the Lexington Institute, your reaction to Trump's comments?
Well, the president's comments are spot on. There is no place for bureaucrats to be influencing speech or containing speech. There's a lot of other very bad things that bureaucrats do as well. Lina Khan and her cronies at the Federal Trade Commission have put a wet blanket on the U.S. economy. They've come out with a number of very bureaucratic requirements on companies that are considering mergers and acquisitions. Fired off a lot of letters to companies that are meant to intimidate, meant to harass, and meant to send some signals that they will come after anybody at any time here. They're extremely litigious. They're extremely hostile to business. And they're not accomplishing anything. They're losing things in courts. They're running to European regulators to try and get them to do things against U.S. companies that they are not legally able to do here in the United States. So there's a whole bunch of mess that arises when you have bureaucrats who come in with a progressive bent ideological mission here. And in the case of Lina Khan, she will be in office basically as long as she wants to be in office at this point. If you or I were a contractor someplace, Rich, and we finished a job, we couldn't just say, I'm just going to go ahead. I remodeled the kitchen. I think I'm going to do the dining room now and, bill these guys for a lot more money because I kind of like it here and I'm kind of into it. But people in the federal government who are in these executive appointed positions get to do that. And they get to do it for at least quite a while, especially when the president does not make nominations in a timely fashion. And usually they don't. And even when they do, they get gummed up by political back and forth stuff. And as a result, you don't have the sharpest, best people managing things in government. And it's the American people who lose on that. And that's quite unfortunate. And that's something that hopefully is going to change in the next 3 to 6 months here.
Yeah, amen to that. Now, Paul Steidler, tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing at Lexington Institute.
Yes, the Lexington Institute is a conservative free market think tank in Arlington, Virginia. We're about a mile and a half away from the sacred ground of the cemetery there. We focus on national defense and free market issues. We believe having a strong military is very important, and we believe that those in the U.S. private sector can generate the wealth, generate the solutions, and generate the opportunities best for this country, as has historically been done, and that there are few things that the government should get involved in or only get involved in as a last resort. For more information, people can visit us at lexingtoninstitute.org.
Outstanding. Well, I appreciate it, sir. Really good conversation and really good to shed some light on that. Folks, check them out at lexingtoninstitute.org. Paul Steidler, have a good night, sir. Enjoy the weekend. And folks, we're going to continue with, we're going to continue with our conversation with you all. And Open Phone America is coming up at the top of the next hour. But before we do that, I want to get into head shrinking mode. And one of, and I don't mean to insult anybody, but few people know how to get inside the mind of a terrorist like Dr. Carole Lieberman, the terrorist therapist. And, she's on court TV. She's an expert witness. She knows this stuff inside and out. And I want to talk about a couple of the cases that are in the headlines lately, whether it's the Trump shooters, either of them, Routh or Crooks. And I want to dig in a little bit on P. Diddy. What's going through this guy's head? So stick with us. We're going to have some discussion on that. And, of course, we're going to tee it all up for open phones across America. Phone number for that, 833-482-5337. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I want to get into a little bit of what's going on inside the minds of these crazies that are in the news. And I guess we'll start with Sean P. Diddy Combs, because he's been in the headlines all week about this huge syndicate of trafficking. And part of it is, just curiosity, right? Like, what goes through the mind of somebody worth $1 billion, and why? I get why they do it, the power and all that, but I'm thinking, why risk losing such a great lifestyle? And I don't know the answers to that, but hopefully our guest, Dr. Carole Lieberman, does. Dr. Carole Lieberman is a Beverly Hills forensic psychiatrist. She's an MD, MPH. You know her as the terrorist therapist. She's been on our program several times, and we love having her back. Dr. Carole, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I want to get into this a little bit. I want you to hear an audio clip of Sean P. Diddy Combs back in 1999, and it seems like he's almost foreshadowing his own arrest because of this lifestyle and these parties. Listen to this.
Your parties are the hottest ticket around.
They won't even give me a permit for the parties, man. They don't want me to throw the parties no more. But we ain't gonna stop. We're gonna keep on having fun, bringing people together from all walks of life. You're gonna hear about my party. They're gonna be shutting them down. They're gonna probably be arresting me, doing all types of crazy things just because we wanna have a good time. You know, whenever you bring up a different element into people's environment, things that broaden people's horizon, people get intimidated. There's a lot of people out there that feel intimidated by it. It ain't nothing but break it down racial barriers, break it down generation barriers, people from all walks of life. Ron Perlman talking to Jay-Z, Jay-Z talking to, you know what I'm saying? It just goes on and on, you know, it's just like people from all walks of life connecting and getting together. Yeah.
Your parties are the hottest ticket in town. People dying to get into your party. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's cool. You know, it doesn't make me feel any way special. It doesn't make me feel like a bigger person. It just makes me feel like I know how to throw a party.
So there he is. Dr. Carole, tell us a little bit about what you think is going on inside the mind of Sean Diddy Combs.
Well, you know, first of all, yes, that's a great idea to mix people of all backgrounds and so on, but you don't have to do it with freak out sex parties. You know, there could be other things that you enjoy doing together. You know, he was almost like daring people in that, you know, saying, oh, I'm going to be arrested and all that, almost daring people to arrest him. How could they arrest me, really? He was thinking, I'm too big to be arrested. He's a very disturbed man. And I think part of it comes from, well, of course, it always comes from one's childhood. And he was born in Harlem, and then he was raised in Mount Vernon, which is actually a nice place. But I don't think well, the main thing that affected him as a child was that his father was killed when he was 2 years old. Oh. And because his father was friends with some drug dealer in New York. And he was sitting in the car one day and he was wiped out. He was killed. He was shot. And so, you know, at 2 years old, so to not have a father starting from then, not only is that bad, of course, to not have a father, but, you know, it kind of gave him a chip on his shoulder, like that wasn't fair that his father got killed at 2 years old. And yes, of course it wasn't, but so that was part of it. Then I think he has a strange relationship with his mother, because there are these pictures of him kissing his mother on the lips, which really seems very inappropriate. And then he was this seems very weird, but he was an altar boy. He was raised Catholic, and he was an altar boy. So he was somewhere in his childhood, he was definitely sexually abused, whether it had to do with his mother or you know, the priest. The cases.
What makes you come to that determination?
Because of the kinds of sexual activities that turn him on. Like, it's not just having sex with one woman. It's having these freak out parties where it has to be a lot of people having sex again and again. You know, continuous sex, giving people IVs so that they can continue to have sex, giving women, and probably men too, drugs to get them to be able to be more manipulated to have sex. And I mean, this is like an over-the-top kind of need for sexual. I'm trying to think of a good word. Sexual, you know. sexual debauchery. I mean, he's going to probably say, or his lawyer is going to probably say, that there was nothing wrong with what he did, that these women and men consented to it, that they were just having sex, and he, at his parties and with him and so on, and it was 2 consenting or 22 consenting adults. So, but that otherwise, I mean, it wouldn't be a crime if that were the case. But when you have to coerce people to take drugs to engage in the kind of sex that you want them to engage in, then that does become a crime. The interesting thing is, sometimes he participated, like he was in the same room where these sex orgies were going on, and sometimes he was in another room and he was just watching it. He was videotaping it and watching it, and masturbating, watching all this sexual activity. So,
now, Dr. Carole, just a question as a follow-up. Would you say that most people that I guess have this type of I don't know if it's deviant or extra type of sexual appetite is because they've been abused, or are some people just like that and into that type of kink?
Not necessarily everybody who does that is, well, I mean, not everybody who, I mean, you don't have to just have vanilla sex, but his is so over the top. The idea that you would think of that you would get pleasure out of that you would keep doing it, with all these people and mixing the drugs and the sex and the, the music and all of that. I mean, it's like it needs it to be so over the top.
Right. No, and I get it. And the reason I ask is because I think in Hollywood, they're kind of known for these types of crazy, lavish type of parties. And my thinking is, maybe they all have a history of sexual abuse, or maybe this is like one big cycle that just perpetuates over and over and over, and they're just repeating the cycle they once experienced.
Well, yes, there are a lot of sexy parties, but I think that Sean Combs parties are probably at the top of the, go beyond the average Hollywood party.
Yeah. Hence the United States attorney saying they found 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, which I don't even know what 1,000 bottles of that looks like, but apparently he had them. Folks, we're on with Dr. Carole Lieberman, forensic psychiatrist. You know her from Court TV and from this program and all over the media. She's truly an expert on this stuff. And we're going to come right back and continue this conversation with Dr. Carole Lieberman. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation tonight with Dr. Carole Lieberman, the terrorist therapist. She's a forensic psychiatrist, a medical doctor, and has a master's in public health. She knows what she's talking about, and you've seen her as an expert witness on Court TV plenty of times, giving analysis as well. And Dr. Carole, there's a woman named Talia Graves, and she said in a news conference that she was assaulted by Sean P. Diddy Combs back in 2001, and now she's bringing a lawsuit against him. I don't know if she's an opportunist or she's the real deal, but here she is.
The violation I have experienced during the assault has had lasting effects on my body, causing ongoing health problems and complications. The combination of physical and emotional pain has created a cycle of suffering from which it is so hard to break free. I want to continue on this journey towards recovery and healing. I'm glad that he is locked up, but that's a temporary feeling of relief.
Now, I am not an expert, Dr. Carole, on victims of sexual abuse and this type of thing, but she sounds really, really distraught to me. Maybe I'm a sucker for a woman crying. What say you?
I thought it was a little overly dramatic. I'm not to say that
well, you're the pro.
Diminish any woman's suffering from physical and sexual abuse, but like one might get from Combs. But it just seemed a little. Is she by any chance? I can't. Gloria Allred has the case. Is she by any chance Gloria Allred?
I'm not sure. Oh, she is actually. Yeah, she is Gloria Allred's client.
I knew it. I forgot the name of Gloria Allred's client, but just the way that she talked is a typical Gloria Allred kind of.
Talia Graves.
What?
Talia Graves is her name, and yeah, I guess she's been coached really well by the best in the business.
Yes, exactly.
Unbelievable. Now, I figured it was. It seemed somewhat opportunistic that it happened right now, but again, you can't really call it because I think some people find their courage once they see that maybe the attacker or the abuser is now behind bars.
Yes. No, I'm not saying that it might not be true. I'm just saying that she has that extra little Allred flair.
Gotcha. Right.
The dramatic
well prepared for the media.
And yes. Actually, he now has 50 cases against him. He started off with one, and then, as time went on, more and more people came out of the woodwork to say that they, too, were abused.
So now, using your expertise, and I know you're not a lawyer and you're not a judge, but you've been an expert witness plenty of times, and you've been on court TV more times than I can count. What do you think is going to happen in a case like this? And I realize it's somewhat of a unique case, but based on your experience, how would you call it?
Well, I think it's going to be. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, there are a few different things. He has said today. It's reported that. He said that he wants to testify, and I don't know how he. Well, I mean, it's probably going to be somewhat like what the tape that you played. Where he was saying he wants to get people of all backgrounds together, and he wasn't doing anything wrong, and it was just to get people to love each other, and that kind of thing. That isn't going to go very far. But part of it, and we don't know how many people, alleged victims, the court is going to allow to testify in any one case, or whether this is going to be broken down into, cases depending upon the location, like L.A. and New York and that kind of thing, or Florida. He has a house in Florida. But, the other part of this is they put him and they located him in the jail in a place for suicide watch. Now, that is very sort of that might be a red flag. I mean, he could potentially out a lot of people, a lot of famous people, as far as what they were doing at his parties. And so it's kind of like Epstein, where some people are, really nervous that he might share their name as a way, perhaps even to get a plea deal. But so, there's the same risk as with Epstein. A lot of famous people don't want him saying that they were at his parties. So his being put on suicide watch could be, claiming he has suicidal thoughts. That could be the way to then kill him, like they did Epstein, to make it look like he was suicidal. Like even now at the beginning that he's already suicidal, and then if he dies, it's already set up. Oh, well, this was suicide.
And Dr. Carole Lieberman, what I think is interesting about this is that they have the videos, right? I mean, he took videos of a lot of this stuff, and the feds have it now. So it's not like, at least from what I understand, they have these videos. So it's not like they really need him to roll over because they know who was at the parties. Do you think it's a question of maybe trying to get him to roll over on where he's getting the drugs or what he did with people or where he was getting the prostitutes? Or do those details seem like somewhat minute compared to the grander scheme of things of how much offending he did?
Well, I mean, they might not go down to the very last drug dealer, but I think they'd like to get as many people of some, where they think that these people might be partaking of these kinds of things, not necessarily at that scale, that level, but in a smaller scale, so to get these people off the street. I know that they're looking for what they're calling medics, the people, whether they're doctors or nurses or people who gave IVs to the participants in these freak-offs, because in order to keep them going after having drugs and after having sex for a long time, they gave them IVs to keep them going.
To prevent dehydration and a hangover. That's crazy.
Yes, to keep it going. I mean, that's so sick, that you would. I mean, it's better than not giving them.
Right. Well, it opens it makes me think of the Michael Jackson stuff and the doctor who was just charged with Matthew Perry's killing, that they were giving him drugs as well, and now these doctors are being held accountable.
Yes, and there is unfortunately a lot of that in Hollywood. Doctors who are willing to risk their licenses in order to get in with celebrities and to make a lot of money.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Carole, I want to thank you for your analysis. And if you don't mind sticking around, we're going to come right back and put a pin in this thing. Folks, we're coming right back with Dr. Carole Lieberman, the terrorist therapist.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you until 1 a.m. Eastern Time. And our guest, Dr. Carole Lieberman, the terrorist therapist. Of course, her website, terroristtherapist.com. And Dr. Carole, in the minute or so we have remaining, I want you to let everybody know how they can follow you and keep up to speed with the amazing work that you're doing.
Okay, well, yes, as you mentioned, my key or the most relevant website these days, between September 11th and October 7th in particular, is terroristtherapist.com. And people can see the video that I had playing this year. I've been doing a music video about 9/11 for the last 4 years. And this year, I rode in the truck myself that was playing it. And I changed it to not just be warm and fuzzy, but to be a video that warns people about the fact that terrorists are in our streets. And so they can see that if they go to terroristtherapist.com, they can see the video.
Outstanding. Well, folks, check out the website, terroristtherapist.com. You can follow her on X, which I still call Twitter, at Dr. Carole MD. She's a great follow. You want to make sure you check her out. And if you see her on TV, support the cause. Dr. Carole, I want to thank you for being here.
You're very welcome.
You bet. Have a great weekend. Godspeed to you. And amigos, we continue straight ahead with your calls, your thoughts, and opinions on everything that's happening in America at night on open phones across America. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome to hour number 3 of our program. I'm really happy to be here with you. It's Friday night. We're live. We're national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And we've talked about a bunch of really interesting stuff tonight. We've talked about how the deep state works, how Joe Biden or whomever is in charge can leave remnants of theirs behind with deep state bureaucrats. We've talked about the border and what a disaster that is because Kamala Harris is headed over to, she head over to the border today and headed, I should say. And what a disaster that was, in my opinion. We'll get into that. And of course, we talked about inside the mind, the inner machinations of a sex trafficker, an accused one, alleged one, Sean P. Diddy Combs. And that was a really interesting conversation that we had with a forensic psychiatrist. And, of course, we're going to continue our conversation tonight. In a little bit, we're going to talk about the latest craze in dating that's happening in Europe, how people are avoiding using Tinder and other online apps, and they're actually dating in real life, picking up people in real time in the least obvious of places. So we're going to get to that. And if you have any stories on dating, I'd love to hear those. But I want to start with some of your calls because there's a lot of calls tonight. And I know Friday nights are typically busy. A lot of people always want to weigh in on all the crazy stuff that's going on throughout the week. But keep in mind that we're still just a little more than a month away from Election Day. So if there's something about that you want to chime in on, you're free to chime in on that as well. But let's go to the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is the phone number. I want to go to Joyce calling us from Great Falls, Montana, streaming the show on richvaldez.com. Joyce, welcome. Go right ahead.
Hey, hello, Rich Valdez. Love your show.
Thank you.
Love the people that come on your show. I hope you stay there for a long time.
Oh, well, I hope so, too. I hope the bosses hear that.
Oh, yeah, you're very good. I was leery at first because I used to listen to Rush all the time, and I really missed him. But you make my day, you make my evening. You make my yes, he is. Yeah, I was going to tell you about when I was, how the government runs and everything. Well, the president would come up and everybody, praise him like a king or whatever. And they don't teach stuff in school about how the government's run right. I mean, they put him up on a pedestal. Well, but when Trump came in, everybody knew how the government worked and how it's supposed to be run, business. And all these
great point.
All this in school. Yes. And then another thing about the kids dating and all that, like the gal with Diddy. You know what? These kids are starstruck, and all they think about is, well, he's the king. He's Diddy. He's this and that. He's just a man. That's just a job.
Oh, you're right, Joyce.
Hollywood people.
But I'll say this. I mean, the starstruck only gets them into the building. I think things go haywire when they start getting drugged, and that's when it becomes a huge deal. But you're right. People need to keep in perspective that. And listen, I'm going to frame this from my perspective. During that time, 1999, Diddy was one of the biggest artists out there. He was managing rappers like Biggie Smalls and others, and it was well known that he had these amazing parties, and I always wanted to go to one. I always wanted to go to one. Actually, I never had the opportunity until probably about 7 or 8, maybe 10 years ago. I actually got like an email invitation. Somebody said, "Hey, do you want to go to this thing?" And he was doing a party with Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Mansion. And it was the P. Diddy party at the Playboy Mansion. And I was like, as fun as that sounds, I just don't think. I think it's in Vegas where they were doing it, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it there. So I never got to go to a P. Diddy party, but I understood the allure. People, it was widely, and it wasn't known as a big freak off or any of those things that we're hearing about now. They were just known as really some of the best parties where you could meet the best contacts, and lots of money in the room, and just really good, especially if you were in the entertainment world. And I guess now I'll never be able to say I went to a P. Diddy party. Joyce, have you?
Well, hell no, and I wouldn't want to. Sex belongs to a man and a woman, and kids. My mother wouldn't let me date till I was 16, and then had to date my brother's boyfriend. Yeah, and I learned to stay away from, people. If they got too fresh. Had 3 brothers. I learned how to take my fist, kick them words, and goodbye, Betty. I'm not that type.
Good for you.
These kids should learn that. Parents, my brother and my mother talked to me all the time. I had 3 brothers. If I was getting harassed by some guy, my brother would kick the shit out of him and say, "Leave my."
Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate that. And big shout out to everybody listening in Great Falls, Montana. And let us continue with the calls. Let me see. Let's go. Hold on a second. So we got another good one here. Let me just make sure we go in order of getting these calls. Yeah, okay, perfect. Like I thought. Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBFI. Paul, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich Valdez with an S.
Yes.
With an S.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's kind of a touchy subject where you have to kind of dance around the obvious when you're discussing sex and whatnot. It's funny. I was at a meeting tonight, and it kind of the meeting topic kind of got veered towards sex, and we're all adults in the room, but still there's snickering here, snickering there, and
right.
And so
I always tell my ex-girlfriend, I always tell her, it doesn't really matter that I'm 46 years old. I'm still, I'll eternally be a 14-year-old boy, right? When it comes to certain things like that, you put me in a room with my buddies and I'm cracking all sorts of jokes. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
There's this one woman that's in there that she's in treatment, so she's verboten. You don't do anything with her except treat her like a young lady that needs love and attention in a different way, not the way that she's probably had it up to that point. And you got to keep that in focus. But my goodness gracious, she's just gorgeous. And it's hard to just keep your mind focused on something that's going to help her and not possibly make her go out and drink or use again.
And veer off and go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and it's a professional attitude, kind of like the way your previous lady was talking,
Dr. Carole.
Dr. Carole, yeah. So, in situations like that, what do? You pull back a couple of yards and you let them think, and you give them all the space that they need, and you give them the love and attention that not the kind that they're probably used to, like I said, but that they could use, and that's just the space.
Yeah, well, listen, and it's real, right? There's in life, I think what you're describing is something that we deal with in every situation, whether it's at work, personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, family relationships. There's always going to be that area where you're tempted to do something, whether it's tell them off, be short-tempered with somebody, whatever the case is. And you don't want to do that, right? You may be tempted to do that, but you don't want to do that because you don't want to set that person off, or you don't want to damage the relationship that you have with them because maybe they're a sensitive person, and if you do something like that, they're not going to get over it easily. And I get that. I learned, I had 2 daughters. That is a lesson I have learned and continue to learn time and time again, that it's you never know, right? You just never know. You always want to err on the side of nice, sweet, and kind, right? That's always where you want to land, because a little bit of a harsh reaction sometimes with things could send somebody off in the wrong direction. when you didn't even mean it that way, just because you happen to be a little bit more abrasive or a little bit more abrupt in your delivery. So I know what you're talking about, whether it's, talking to the hot chick at the meeting or dealing with people that you might be a little more sensitive than you are. It's always a challenge. It's a little bit of a tightrope that you got to walk. Paul in Boise, thank you for that insight. I appreciate it. KBFI, shout out to you guys, Boise, Idaho. And let's see, I'll take a quick pause right here. We will come back to your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Transnational gangs coming across the border, trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings could care less who somebody voted for in the last election. They could care less. They've got one goal in mind. And it is therefore critically important that anybody who calls themselves a leader would work with other leaders for common sense solutions, understanding the pain and the suffering that Americans are experiencing if we don't work together to fix these problems.
Yeah, and she was waiting for an applause line there, and there was like half a clap. It was like, it was pretty embarrassing for her. Anyway, she says that transnational gangs don't care about who was voted in for president. I'm going to disagree with that. Let me ask you a question, America. Do you guys remember the term or the name Tren de Aragua during the Trump years? I know the answer. It's no. Nobody heard of this gang. Only people in Venezuela and neighboring countries. We didn't have Tren de Aragua in the United States, at least not in the effect that we have it now, where they're taking over buildings in Colorado and everywhere else that they go. No, we did not. Why? Because they cared who was voted in for president. They knew that there was in their opinion, xenophobic dictator autocrat that was going to kill them. Right? El Trompito. They were afraid of this man. They said he was unhinged. They said he was a lunatic. They said he was going to bring us to the brink of world war with North Korea, with Russia, with this and with that. And here we are. Kamala Harris has an open border. Kamala Harris and her crazy grandpa, Joe El Baboso Biden, he's got an open border. He's got a war going on in Europe. He's got a war going on in the Middle East. And Kamala Harris is out there showing up at the border today, too little, too late, I might say. And I love it. I'm glad. I hope she spends the rest of her campaign at the border because this is an issue that she needs to own. She thinks that she can run away from this border czar label. And guess what? Whether she was border czar, lead person, point person, Biden administration official in charge of the border, whatever you want to call it, she was the border czar. This was her job. Biden appointed her to this. He said, you're taking the lead, just like Mike Pence was our COVID czar, right? El Trompito said, Mike Pence is going to be our lead person on this. And he was. And that's that, right? There's certain things that you just can't debate. And that's exactly how it is. So, yeah, you know what? People are upset about illegal immigration. Parents that have lost their children to these savage, brutal, criminal rapists that are coming across the border. When we heard that report from Fox News in the first hour, and I'll play it for you again momentarily so that you have an idea of what's going on. Well, let's play it right now. Let's play that Bill Melugin cut from the Fox News channel talking about 425,000 criminal aliens that have come across, plus another 200 and something thousand people, total of 650,000 short. It's 660 something, actually. 600,000 people, criminals that we knew were criminals. A good portion of them murderers allowed to be in this country. Check this out.
According to a letter that the acting director of ICE just sent to Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez, on ICE's non-detained docket, they're currently tracking 425,000 non-citizens who have been convicted of a crime. Of that number, over 13,000 non-citizens have convictions for homicide and are on the non-detained docket, meaning they're roaming the country right now. On top of that, there are another 15,811 non-citizens convicted of sexual assault who are roaming the country right now on ICE's non-detained docket. It doesn't stop there. Those are convictions. The ICE director also says there are currently just under 1,900 non-citizens on the non-detained docket who have pending homicide charges who are roaming the country, and another 4,250 non-citizens who have pending sexual assault charges who are roaming the country on the non-detained docket.
I just want to echo some words from a guy that was running for president back in 2015 and 16, and he said, they're sending us their worst, they're sending us their rapists, their murderers. What did you just hear? This man just told you there are hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants that are here that have been convicted of rape, sexual assault, and homicide in their country, and were allowed to come here anyway. Instead of calling him El Trumpito, I might have to call him Nostradamus, right? He knew what was going on. Anybody with two eyes could have seen this coming, but he had foresight. He was very prescient about this, right? A lot of us didn't see it until he pointed it out, and then we're like, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. Unbelievable. Let's go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Larry, WRNN. Go for it, my man.
Oh, yeah, you were on a roll the other day when you were filling in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Oh, thank you, Larry.
You're expressing your anger over the immigration problem here. You know,
it's a horrible problem.
We the people have the right to be angry. You know, I thought of Jesus when he tipped over the tables in the temple and he yelled at, he said, "You're making my den, my father's house a den of thieves."
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought of that. But that's the way this country's being treated. You know, Mark said something about they're using this immigration problem almost like a revolution. You know. And,
absolutely.
I just thought of the Revolutionary War, how we kicked the British out. The War of 1812, we kicked the British out. And we even survived the Civil War, to end slavery. We can do this. We just got.
I agree with you. Now it's going to be the figurative war of 2024 to kick out Harris and Biden from the White House. It's what we got to do and get rid of as many pro-crime progressives out of Washington as we can. People that believe in abolishing ICE, people that believe in abolishing the police, defunding the police. We need to defund the Democrats and do a lot better. Larry in Myrtle Beach, thanks for tuning in to the other show and to this show. I appreciate it. Shout out to the great one. Always a pleasure to be at his service if he needs me to fill in. And folks, we continue with the rest of you guys. Shout out to WRNN, by the way. And everybody listening in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Coming back with the rest of your calls and more. And again, how are people dating in Spain? I'm going to play a report for you when we come back. This was an eye-opening one for me. It was just interesting, to say the least. Of course, your calls on everything else coming up, from the hurricane to the assassination attempt to everything else that's going on in the news. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The pineapple is changing the dating game in Spain. They're not using Tinder, Bumble, or any dating apps. They are going to a specific supermarket from 7 to 8 p.m. People that are trying to find love are going to this specific supermarket called Mercadona. Now, Mercadona is all over Spain, so this is happening across the country. So how do you know who's looking for love? Single people that want to find their other half grab a pineapple. They put it upside down in their shopping cart. Once you have the pineapple, you head to the wine selection or the wine aisle. Once you get there, if you find someone that you like and they also have the pineapple upside down, you have to crash your shopping cart. If you're looking for a long-term relationship, people buy a pack of lentils because lentils last forever in your pantry. But if you're looking for a one-night stand type of thing, people buy lettuce because it goes bad quickly. So if you're in Spain right now and you want to find love, head to Mercadona from 7 to 8 and see what happens.
So that's a report from Anna Gildersleeve on her TikTok channel. And the pineapple is used as a symbol of relationships by single people in Spain that are looking to find love at a place called Mercadona Supermarket. And there's a bunch of these Mercadona supermarkets, and they go to different ones, but they all go at the same time. It's like a radio show, right? These are the affiliates. And they go between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. And they use this as a signal that they're looking to have a relationship. Now, as you heard her in the report, if you're more like a P. Diddy type that's just looking for the freak off, then you put a head of lettuce in your shopping cart so they know that it's something that will go bad quickly. I thought this was so entertaining to me, honestly. And the trend was popularized by a Spanish actor and a comedian named Vinny Lin, who posted a TikTok video about this, about the dating hour at Mercadona. And the trend has led to chaotic scenes, even police being called to restore order at some of these stores. Some say the trend is a commentary on the dating scene in 2024. I would say that's probably true. And it likely is an indictment on the fact that people don't want to do online dating. And some of the other reactions are that the trend is a sign that people are growing maybe bored with some of the dating apps and they want a real life spark. I think that's probably true. Others say that the trend is a sign that people are frustrated with the dating apps and the fact that some of them are now paid and they're not free and the algorithms are making them not as effective as they used to be. Now, some other supermarkets like Lidl, ILDL, competitor of theirs, are also trying to get in on it with this trend by hosting their own campaigns for their own dating hour. So I think that's pretty cool. And that would be the smartest thing to do is for somebody to be, create a website and say, no, we're doing the pineapple thing at every supermarket between 7 and 8, right? And instead of letting Mercadona corner the market. Now, if you work for Mercadona, then I would definitely corner the market and be like, don't go to the imposters, come to us. We've got supermodels coming in between 7 and 8. I don't know how they would spin that, but I thought that was such an interesting story and something I wanted to share in the midnight hour, especially on a Friday, because I hadn't heard of anything like that, but every now and again you find something that's interesting that's I think a pretty good idea. Anyway, let's go to some of your calls. Let's go to Walter in St. Augustine, Florida, WFOY. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. How are you tonight? Good?
Wonderful, thank you.
Great. I was in Spain 2 years. I was stationed there in the Navy. And beautiful, beautiful people. Yeah. What I wanted to say to you was just a little kind of a joke. It's being old-fashioned, what our grandparents or our grandmothers actually would say to VP Harris. So I'd like to say it in Spanish, and maybe you can translate.
Go ahead.
VP Harris, por favor, ponte un vestido alguna vez.
Vice President Kamala Harris, you should try wearing a dress sometimes.
Perfect. Thank you. I
love
practice
it.
my Spanish all the time.
Yeah, and it's an interesting statement that would soften the image. It's something Hillary Clinton's never done either. At least I didn't see it when she ran for president in the later years. When she was first lady, I think there's a bunch of photos, or at least I think I remember seeing some of her in a dress. And I guess, that's the my inner sexist coming out. But I think it's a good idea for women to wear dresses because a guy can wear a suit. You can wear jeans. You can wear pants, slacks, Dockers, khakis, whatever, right? Your options are limited, even though you go from business to business casual to formal, casual, whatever. But women have the ability to put on a dress and allow all of their feminine beauty to just, be on full display. Let their hair down, put on lipstick. If you can do that as a woman, do it, right? Why not? Show every side of you. I think Melania Trump is often lauded as the most attractive first lady. And again, it doesn't surprise me that she was a fashion model. And she knows what she's doing. She wears dresses. She wears really cool outfits. If you got it, you got to make it work. And I think Kamala Harris, I don't think is an ugly person by any means. I think she was a very attractive younger person. And even in her 60s, at least by my account, I think she's not an ugly woman. And she could probably benefit, maybe even get a couple of points in the polls if she dressed it up a little bit. And maybe spoke a little less, too, and laughed a little less. I think she'd be doing a lot better. Hold on. Are they hiring at her campaign? I'm kidding. Anyway, we're going to continue with your thoughts and your calls. Walter, thank you for the call, brother. St. Augustine, Florida, WFOY. And let's go to Frank in Evergreen, Montana, as we're dealing with the wake of this hurricane that's hitting Florida. 45 people now lost their lives. Frank on KOFI, go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. Now, Rich, I'm in a state called, our motto is "It's God's country." It's similar to Ireland, too. They call that God's country. But over there, it's about 80% Catholic, but only maybe 30% go to church, but there's no Catholic churches anymore. The Protestants took them over. But anyway, here in Montana, it's about the same. It's about 38% of the population of Montana even go to church, but they're into beer drinking and they're into politics. It's they've got patriotic beer. They've got everybody on both sides are in the beer drinking contests. And my God, it's the prudent thing to do in Montana. But it's an alcohol problem. It really is. And there's slip roads and everything. And it drives up insurance rates. And
they don't have rates. Uber in Montana?
Oh, yes. And none of them are local drivers. They don't know how to get anywhere.
Well, Frank, I'll tell you a story. I was talking to my brother the other day, and he was telling me about a story he'd heard. And it was about the Uber driver that got locked up for a DWI. And he only knows this because he knew somebody who knew somebody. But apparently the guy had just finished his Ubering and was off the app, and when he got pulled over, so the police didn't know that he was an Uber driver. But he told his friends after he was drinking while he was Ubering. Now, he ended up getting a DWI, and he's going to lose his license. But even I guess to date, they had no idea that the guy was Ubering. And I'm just thinking, wow, I wonder how many times I may have gotten into an Uber, for whatever reason. I usually do that if I go into Manhattan, if I don't want to drive. And I hate driving in Manhattan because there's nowhere to park. So, Uber. It's cheaper than driving and paying for parking. And not always cheaper, but definitely easier. And I just thought to myself, just imagine like what you're saying. People want to go out and, enjoy the libations. And guess what? Now you're getting driven home by a drunk Uber driver. I mean, that's just crazy. That would be nuts. Anyway, Frank, I appreciate the call. Welcome back. I know you were in Ireland for a while. I'm glad you're back home. Shout out to KOFI in Montana. And let's continue with your calls. Let's see. Let's go to Lynn, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA, America's oldest radio station. Lynn, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Oh, hi, Rich. I have never called a talk show, but
well, thanks for calling mine.
Talk about, and I just love your show. I listen to it all the time. But
thank you.
I was listening to you were touching on all the report from ICE today. About there were
the criminal
over
aliens.
13. Yeah, all the ones that are being released by ICE into the country, murderers and sexual assaults. And the only thing is, I heard it on Fox News, and I heard it on Newsmax, but I don't think any of the mainstream media is covering it. And even on your news, it didn't cover it on there.
Yeah, well, that's what we're here for, right? I'm here every day to try and give you the little nuggets of truth that the mainstream media forgot or conveniently turned a blind eye on. This is how they do what they do. This is why so many of your friends that, may not listen to conservative talk radio or even care about the news, they're just going about their lives and they're thinking everything's fine. And because they don't know, because they're told they should be worrying about the hurricane. And again, you should worry about a hurricane if you're in Florida. But that's the news is leading with the hurricane. The news is leading with let me see what else they got here. They're talking about Facebook. They're talking about J.D. Vance. They're talking about attending an event with an evangelist who said Harris used witchcraft. They're just ridiculing the Trump campaign, but they're not doing anything to talk to you about what's going on at your southern border and what they're doing to make America safe. And the reality is they've done nothing but make America more dangerous, Lynn.
Right, and it's not fair because everybody needs to know all these facts, and when they go to vote.
You're 100% right, Lynn. Well, I want to thank you for being a first-time caller to this program. I really do appreciate it, and I had promised a couple of other listeners a T-shirt. And like a month ago, and you're going to get it soon. They're finally in. They were on back order, but they're in. But I'm going to offer one to you, Lynn, for being a first-time caller, never calling talk radio and deciding to call my show. I'm honored. Please give your size and the where to send it to our folks in the control room, and we'll get it out to you between now and, 2 weeks or whatever it takes to get to you. Lynn in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. And we continue with your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And a little bit of breaking news. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, the lieutenant governor in North Carolina, he has been hospitalized following a campaign event earlier tonight, Friday night, and was burned. He's been treated for second-degree burns. And I just want to wish him the best. Thoughts and prayers are with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Somebody hit me on social media the other day and said, you were unfair to Mark Robinson on TV this weekend. And I thought, I didn't say anything. All I said was, that's his problem, not Trump's problem, the problem that he's in. And I didn't mean it to be insensitive in any way. That wasn't my intention. And I'm not saying I think he's guilty or anything like that. I'm just saying that, this is a guilt by association attack on him, really attacking Trump, right? This whole website thing, the CNN report. Now he's hired a really good attorney, one we've had on this program many times, to help him sort through that. So I wish him the best with both his health and with this incident that he's got with the CNN report that came out about him. Anyway, I want to continue with your calls because it's the speed round. And we're all going to get out of here soon. Where do we go? Lance in Kalispell, Montana. Go right ahead.
Good evening. Quickly. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, given your show this evening, anybody that's invested more than 5 minutes in federal elections has heard the term October surprise. But given the 1,000 shiny objects that every platform of media is dangling in front of the mass populace at the moment, could you possibly speculate on what could even be an October surprise at this point?
Thank you, Lance. I think it's a fantastic question that you put out there. I would say I don't know, right? But if we look at the pattern that the left has, it's always something that's designed to destroy them as a person, right? It's never something factual. It's never going to be something like, oh, we discovered that you didn't pay your taxes. And if it is, well, we've discovered you haven't paid your taxes for 15 years because you're a criminal, right? And they'll lie and what have they released? Remember when they released it, they stole and leaked Trump's taxes, put them out there. And for what? It showed a big nothing burger, right? Nobody cared about that. Rachel Maddow was exploding about that one. So, yeah, I would say, I don't know. The way things are going, I would bet the October surprise here is going to be something that hurts Kamala Harris, not something that hurts El Trompito. Similar to the October surprise in the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop. That was a gift that still gives. And, of course, they washed it and covered it up and, clean up in aisle 6, right? They made sure it went away. But ultimately, that was an October surprise that I think benefited Trump. And honestly, even in 2016, James Comey saying Hillary Clinton's emails, were something that he wouldn't lock her up for, but was grossly negligent and dishonest and whatever he said. Again, something that benefited Trump. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get an October surprise that benefits Trump. And I guess I'll leave it there. Lance and Kalispell, thank you, brother. KFI, shout out to you guys. I'm going to take a quick pause right here. We're coming right back. We've got calls from all over Oregon, Ohio, South Carolina, Vermont, Arkansas, Arizona, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, it is the speed round. That means when that clock hits 30 seconds, I got to move on. Let's go to Richard, Burlington, Vermont, WVMT. Go for it. What's going on with the assassination attempt?
Hi, Rich. I love the show. I'd like to hear your opinion about the Butler, PA shooting and how fast the shooter was cremated and how quickly the roof was hosed off.
Yeah, well, you know what? Listen, I'm going to tell you this. I believe that this guy had help. I don't know who was helping. I don't know if it was a tip or a weak link within the Secret Service, somebody getting information somewhere that is benefiting whomever it is that's trying to kill Trump. And I don't think it's a lone wolf crazy person, that's for sure. Shout out to WVMT. Let's go to Jerome, Charleston, WTMA. Go for it. What's going on with Trump?
Republicans are a bunch of dumb, two-faced, gullible morons.
But they do a pretty good job on the economy, Jerome, right? Don't they? I think they do. And when Trump says he wants to secure the border, at least he's got 4 years of a track record that look a heck of a lot better than Kamala Harris. How's that for honesty and integrity and everything? I think it's pretty good. Let's continue. Monica, Pendleton, Oregon. I hear we have a birthday. Happy birthday to you, Monica, on KUMA. What's going on with P. Diddy?
Oh, it's just not only him, but I'm taking a step back, and I just feel like that all the evil, all the BS, everything is coming to light. I mean, his thing is like a dark octopus, and the Democrats, the leftists, everything.
It's a dark day in America. You're 100% right there. Happy birthday to you, Monica. Thank you. God bless you. Shout out to KUMA. And let's go to Sedona, Arizona, and check in with our buddy Pat, streaming at richvaldez.com. Go for it, brother.
Hey, Rich, I wanted to thank you and thank all those people from the oldest radio station in America.
Oh, that is so sweet of you, brother. I appreciate it. Hate to cut you off, but the music means they're kicking me out of here. Joe in Salem, shout out to you listening on WLS. And, of course, our buddy in Zanesville, the other Paul, thanks for your call as well. All right, amigos, hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care. And God bless you, America. I am Rich Valdez.